And with him, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, and Governors Kihika Kimani and Waigoro Mbarire. This is Cecily Mbarire. The Cabinet also, it says here, is on a 4-day retreat that ends tomorrow. The story continues on page 16 of the Standard today. Strange kidnap, shock murder of businessman. On Valentine's Day, Jayesh Kanji was walking in Nairobi West with his family. Moments later, he was picked up by someone in a Toyota Prado. Later, and miles away, a blood trail led security guards to a thicket where they found a checked shirt, a shoe, underwear, metal rod, and pieces of bones. What really happened? What really happened? That is the burning question. And you have all the gritty details on page 5 of the Standard this morning. And scars of city gas explosion almost a month later. Heaps of burnt-out wreckage still lie bare at Murari Estate, the scene of a tragic gas explosion scene. Victims are still scarred, a testimony to the devastating impact of the night fireball. For them, life will never be the same again. We go behind the scene to investigate, and you can read a special report that is published today in the Standard on page 2 and 3 of the gas explosion that happened at Murari village. What really went wrong? And Kihika risks jail over war memorial tussle. Court prioritizes hearing of an application by the hospital's administration seeking to cite Governor Kihika and Nakuru County Police Chief Ndanyi for contempt. You have a story on page 9 of the Standard. Ruto, Tinubu, the flying presidents, right? Ruto and Tinubu are now labeled the flying presidents. You can follow the story on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Tough test as Arsenal face Porto. You can read all about it also inside the sports pages of the Standard this morning. Let's see what the Daily Nation is holding for us. State House extra budget blocked. That is a splash. And the flagger on top here reads transparency. Past audit reports have found the provision of the crisis spending has been abused. The control of budget, Margaret Nyakango rejected request by the national government to spend 47 billion shillings under an emergency provision that allows withdrawals without parliamentary approval. Among the blocked expenditures were 1.1 billion shillings by State House for the purchase of vehicles and building of a modern presidential dais. That story continues on page 7 of the Daily Nation. Fuel prices to rise as state triples April levy. Consumers will pay more for fuel after the government tripled the tax payable to the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority (EPRA) for every litre of the commodity purchased. That is on page 12. So more pain. A relief was by a shilling. Now it will go up by, of course, 3 shillings or more. You can read all the details there on page 12 of the Daily Nation. Tragedy. Kenyan student dies on arrival in Dublin. A family in Baringo wants an investigation into the cause of death of their 23-year-old daughter 3 days after returning to Dublin, Ireland, where she had been studying for 8 months. You have a story on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning covering that story. Governors insist counties must get 450 billion shillings. A meeting with governors at the ongoing National Executive Retreat in Naivasha failed to unlock the deadlock over the devolved units' share of national revenue, even as President Ruto pledged his administration is committed to strengthening devolution. Treasury has offered 391 billion shillings, but county chiefs want more. And that story continues on page 5 of the Daily Nation today. That's how it looks. Remember also the parenting magazine comes in handy for you as well. This ties up next. Auditor report unearths 15.6 billion shillings wrought at REREC. Senior officials had been suspended at the Rural Electrification Agency over payments. And you have a story on page 4 and 5. Fictitious top managers on the spot over large and suspicious financial payouts. That is the story. And why Ruto's charity call fell on deaf ears. And you can see a related picture there. You can read all the details as well inside the Star this morning. Doctors threatens go slow over delay in posting inters. And it says doctors have given health stakeholders until March the 1st to ensure the placement of all pending medical interns. Speaking yesterday, the Medical Practitioners, Pharmacist and Dentist Union Secretary General Davji Atela said all the interns must get their posting letters by the said date. According to KMPDU, 1,215 medical interns are awaiting posting, with some having waited for either 6 months or 1 year. Atela said the interns had been wallowing in desperation at home, yet the country suffers from a shortage of doctors in hospitals. You have a story inside the Star this morning. Mackenzie and 94 others in hospital after hunger strike. A magistrate court in Mombasa has ordered cult leader Paul Mackenzie and 94 other co-accused persons to be taken to hospital after they staged yet another hunger strike. That story continues on page 9 of the Star this morning. And how Al-Shabaab capitalized on poaching to fund terrorism. This is blood money, how Al-Shabaab capitalized on poaching to fund terrorism. Read all about it on page 14 and 15 of the Star this morning. Let's go continue pace and we'll see what is on the front page of the People Daily. Teacher Service Commission paid 466 million shillings to dead teachers. It's a probe. Employer in bizarre revelations tells House team that the agency has written letters to widows seeking refund for salaries given to deceased husbands, retired tutors, and those who had exited the profession. This story continues on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. And governors reject Ruto 390 billion shillings revenue offer. Also tougher job for new NSC top man, right? Geoffrey Odundo has exited. And of course, we have a new man at the helm of Nairobi Security Exchange. You can read all about it in the Business Hub of the People Daily this morning. Call me. Why Ahmed President? Chief Justice says dialogue between arms of government is healthy, but discussions on court decision in cases is a no-go zone. That is the story that you want to follow inside the People Daily this morning. Taifa leo, magavana wakaidi serikali wasisitiza lazima wapewe bilioni 450 kama mgao wa kaunti badala ya nchi, badala ya chini ya bilioni 400 walizotengewa. And you can read all about it inside the Taifa Leo this morning. And also Azimio yalemewa bungeni. That is the story that you want to follow on page 2. This is regarding also the housing levy that sailed through. This is where Azimio also they got the short end of a stick, so to speak. We have the Business Daily, and Financial Crimes Watchdog flags 86 billion shillings in 3 years. Corruption most rewarding for money launderers. 1,938 fraud cases scrutinized by Financial Reporting Center. Kenyan investigative agencies flagged and investigated more than $591.36 billion, I should say, generated from suspected illicit activities, including corruption, fraud, and cybercrimes in the 3 years to July 2023, raising fears that part of the money may have been laundered into the financial system. And you can follow the story inside the Business Daily this morning. Interest rates on bank loans race past 26% in fresh review. Commercial banks are now charging more than 26% interest on loans in another round of credit repricing that signals more pain for risky borrowers amid a surge in defaults. That is the story you want to follow on page 2, right? Maybe this will also bring back the debate on capping on the interest rates. We're back to where we were before, where loans were very expensive. Professor Kagwanja. Also, fresh pain at the pump as states triples April levy is another story you can follow in the Business Daily. State House hit as 47 billion shilling spending request rejected. And also Kenya Eurobond yields fall. Yields on Kenyan Eurobonds have fallen into the single digits territory as investors' jitters wear off following the partial payment of 285.6 billion shillings. That is 2 billion shillings debut Eurobond. That is the debut Eurobond. You can follow inside the Business Daily this morning. Let's cross over to Uganda, where Mao, he says to Museveni, hand over power peacefully. That is the story there. Mao to Museveni, hand over power peacefully. That is on the front page of the Daily Monitor this morning. And also government drafts policy on Mukene. Uganda plans for pipeline from Tanzania. Uganda plans for pipeline from Tanzania. And this is a new oil deal that Uganda now is striking with Tanzania. Kenyan or Kenya being left out on this particular deal. Something went south between us and Uganda, and you can read all about it inside the Daily Monitor this morning. Also, the Citizen, real estate up for major boost with proposed law. The Ministry of Lands, Housing and Human Settlements Development is in the early stages of enacting a law to govern real estate business in the country as it looks to regulate, coordinate and promote the booming industry. You can follow all that inside the Citizen this morning. And we can try and go to Rwanda right now, where DRC's Rwandaphone question is the splash here. DRC Rwandaphone question: what U.S. African leaders said. Various African leaders have spoken out on the issue of Congolese Tutsis communities. And you can follow the story on page 3 of the New Times this morning. And revamp Amharo Stadium. How will traffic be managed on match days? That's the question. And you can read all about it inside the New Times. Burera registers decline in smuggling drugs. According to officials on mental health, can AI-powered chatbots enhance access to care, combat stigma? That's a probing question. All the details inside the New Times. If you're waking up in Rwanda this morning, this is the East African this week. Congo is banning. This is a splash. Kinshasa, Rwanda and Burundi leaders have traded blame on who is fanning the new violence in the restive eastern region, but in the jungles are also foreigners exploiting blood minerals. That is a splash this morning inside the East African. And this week as well, NTBS cost EAC dearly. Imports, quotas, subsidies, custom delays, technical barriers impede trading, leading to low intra-EAC trade. You have the story continuing on page 26 and 27 of the East African this morning. And AU's 2023 scorecard, the continental body takes up new assignments as the forgotten, quote-unquote, the forgotten issues rear their ugly head. You have the story on page 10 of the East African this week. Grab a copy to get all the weather as far as the region is concerned. And the China Daily is up next. Proactive workers adapt to artificial intelligence. White-collar, relatively high-paying jobs starting to feel the pinch of new technology. And also C919 planes net more new orders at Airshow. All that is inside the China Daily. Russia-Ukraine conflict can only be resolved politically. That is an opinion there by Tian Diwen. You can read all about it inside the China Daily as well. I shall be showing you more on what we do have on the front page of the international publications as we go right now. But right now we want just to hear from our panelists already here in studio, just to get a glimpse of what is going on. And they tell us, just to give us introductory remarks. First of all, I'm holding court this morning with Dr. Hassan Kanenje, who is the director of the Horn Institute of Strategic Studies. Also, we do have with us Professor Peter Kagwanja, who is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute. We have Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is a peace, conflict and resolution expert and analyst, and we'll be joined later by Professor Bashara Munene, who is a historian as well. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
should we be giving you some more tea? Or?
No, we are doing all right. Only that there are some echoes. I don't know what that.
We'll sort it out. Don't worry about the echoes. We'll sort out all the echoes. But let's just begin with Dr. Hassan Kanenje. Good to see you. Last week we missed you.
Yeah,
good to be back.
See you too.
Yeah, but I think before I even give you that particular honor of greeting us, we should welcome Dr. Mustafa. It's been a while. He's been missing. He's been globe-trotting. He's been a busy man. 2023 was his year, huh?
Yeah, it was a busy year as well. Yes, glad to be back here, and I hope this in 2024 I'll be coming here more often than I did in 2023. Yeah, like I used to in 2022 and 2021.
Yes. And you began last year also that way, and then things I think caught up with you. But it's good to have you.
Thank you.
Just to join the panel continuing as well. Dr. Hassan Kanenje?
Yes, I think Dr. Mustafa must have tried to volunteer with Wagner in Ukraine, but things got really tough. So I decided to come back. So let's welcome him back. It's not good to be a mercenary. Yeah, it's yet another week. Very interesting things going on. As your opening remarks, you mentioned about the position of the AU Commission, which Kenya is primed, and I think it's time the seat comes back to the region. So how that is going to happen, of course, is subject of another discussion. And so there is the AU meeting that just ended the summit. At least a number of things that have been taking place with the region that I think are going to be worth talking about as a result. So we're looking forward to a very interesting March, considering everything that is happening. Let's just make sure that your security don't prevent Professor Kagwaja from coming here the way it happened in Addis Ababa for somebody. Yeah, but there's plenty of drama going on around the region and in the world that is going to be of interest to Kenyans and to us here.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Make sure at least the security details. They're not really blocking Kagwanja from coming into the studios to talk on pertinent issues. Yeah. Good morning.
We will still prevail. We've been there before, and we have been prevailed. So remember in the 1990s, and particularly in the 1990s, were very difficult for us who were those days in the human rights fraternity. It was really, really difficult. I was teaching at Moi University, and every Monday it was required of me by a certain Mount Kenya CID officer who was sent to deal with me to report every Monday morning to CID in Eldoret to say what I'm going to teach in my class at Moi University. We did that for 1 year. So we'll still report here and they say what we want to say, and that's it. So, but on a broader note, I think the region is becoming extremely dangerous, and we are seeing ideologies that we've not seen for a long time. You remember the Ugandan princess, what was Princess Lakwena, and that ideology of the God's command to overwhelm Uganda and the neighbors and all that. You got the successor to Lakwena, LRA, Konyi. Those were those days considered extremist ideologies, but we're getting more extremist ideologies from the mainstream now. The plague of a Jericho Christianity in the leadership of the region, where literally rationality is giving way to emotions and so on across the board. And of course we still have the sit tight leadership of the time. In our region, we are having expansionists. People say in Rwanda they want to recreate the old Rwandese empire that never became before the coming of the Europeans. In Ethiopia, they want to recreate the Kush empire. So we have the push for the new Kush, which will eat into our own territory, if you don't mind, all the way up to Tana River and Lamu, if it's actualized, because this is based on ethnic identity rather than any ideological, prevailing. You come to other parts. I mean, it's chaos. Amid this all chaos, then we get what we're calling, the Kenya's push for the AU. Or is it, not one Kenyan, but many Kenyans now pushing to head the African Union? And what are we offering? What is it that we are taking to the African Union other than jobs? I think that's a fundamental question to ask. Other than seeking for a lucrative job, and that also come amidst the push for jobs abroad for Kenyans. So is the AU the new frontier? Are we going to get IGAD? Of course, we have already the East African Community. We want to go to Germany. We got to go to Japan and all that. So it's a can that we need to basically empty and see what it contains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, we just need to move right now and get the stories of the day as well before we buckle down to those pertinent issues that are being raised around the region as well. Where we have the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, maintaining that the economy is on the right path. According to the CS, Kenya registered a 5.6% growth rate compared to the average global rate of 3%, with a restructuring of the Eurobond repayment plan aiding in stabilizing the exchange rate of the shilling against the US dollar. He spoke at the National Executive Retreat in Naivasha, which was also attended by chairpersons of various committees in the Council of Governors. In the same meeting, President William Ruto reiterated his commitment to support devolution, to revise or to realize the government's agenda. Ken Gachuhi has more.
President William Ruto led a joint meeting between members of his cabinet and chairpersons of various committees in the Council of Governors in Naivasha on Tuesday.
Then we also had an opportunity to look at the various sectoral areas as defined in the Nanyuki retreat. From the Nanyuki retreat, there are 5 specific cluster groups.
The country's economic position took center stage during the meeting, with National Treasury CS Professor Njuguna Ndung'u saying that the economy was on a recovery path.
There's strong evidence to show that economic recovery is with us. And that starts from the last quarter of 2023. We have a growth of 5.6% in that quarter. It means that it averages the growth in the whole of 2023 to about 5.5 to 5.6.
The CS explaining that the exchange rate for the Kenyan shilling against the dollar was improving following the restructuring of the Eurobond repayment plan, which was to mature in July this year.
We said, let's try to de-risk this Eurobond, and then we will see how foreign direct investment cases and even the exchange rate, how it will respond. And we have seen that it has responded. We actually managed to restructure the maturity profile of future payments instead of having a bullet payment of 2 billion, because that is what was moving the market.
The Council of Governors, led by its chairperson Anne Waiguru, registered its dissatisfaction with a section of officers in the national government, saying that some of them were undermining devolution.
Other than the issue of even resources, think politics. This country had reached a place where it was almost breaking because of centralization of power. And if we claw back everything, it may not happen now. It may not happen in 5 years. It may not happen in 10 years, but there will be a revolt by the people because we will go back to the problems that we had before devolution.
President William Ruto, however, assured the governors of his support, even as Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi said that the equitable share of revenue was not based on how the national government perceives the counties, but on the available funds.
At a personal level, and this administration, we support devolution 100%. You should never have any doubt as to our support.
They had a desire of a certain figure, but it is all, as we said, we want to manage prudently, realistically, and within our means. So we've had that conversation.
The president will close the 3-day executive retreat on Wednesday, with the National Treasury assuring Kenyans that the economy is on the right track. All eyes are now on the various ministries as they implement various policies to sustain that trajectory. Ken Gashuhe, KTN News, in Naivasha, Nakuru County.
Now, the African Union has opened a window for those interested for the position of the AU Commission chairperson and the deputy chairperson to start sending their applications. Among the academic requirements is a PhD or a master's degree in either law, international relations, economics, or political science. And as our senior political affairs reporter Chris Thairo tells us, the academic requirements seem to have opened a debate on the credentials of Azimio leader Raila Odinga, who is eyeing the powerful position.
The election of the next chairperson and the deputy chair of the African Union Commission is exactly 1 year away. But lobbying through shuttle diplomacy in all the 54 member states has already started in earnest. The African Union Commission has, through its website, posted a vacancy for the position of chairperson and the vice chairperson, as well as the academic requirements for those interested in the position. For one to qualify, he or she must possess at least a master's degree in law, international relations, economics, diplomacy management, business administration, political science, and social sciences, or a PhD in law, political science, international relations, or business management. When it comes to experience, one should have not less than 20 years of relevant professional international experience, at least 10 years having served in progressive senior leadership roles. Back home, Kenya, through the Kenya Kwanza administration, has already agreed to front Azimio leader Raila Odinga for the top job in the continent. However, this has also opened debate on the education qualifications of the Azimio leader. In the run-up to the 2022 general election, President William Ruto questioned the academic credentials of Raila Odinga.
Kama kuna mtu ambaye hajulikani makaratasi yake ni ule candidate wa president wa Azimio. Makaratasi yake haijulikani imetoka kwa university gani. Huyo candidate wenu wa Azimio ni mtu ambaye hana classmate hata moja. Ni mtu ambaye hakuna mtu anasema alikuwa lecturer yake. Ni mtu ambaye hajulikani alisomea university gani.
But Azimio leader Raila Odinga is already on record that he proceeded to Germany after receiving a scholarship in 1965 to study at the Technical College of Magdeburg, now part of the Eindhoven University, and graduated.
Akatukwambia anaitwa Mumbi Ngaru. Nikafanya utafiti nikapata huyo Ngaru ambaye ni bwana yake ni jamaa tulisoma naye Ujerumani. Injinia Ngaru ndiye yuko pale. Tulisoma naye huko Ujerumani. Kaka yake mkubwa Mburu Miano ndiye alinikaribisha nikiwa mtoto mdogo huko Ujerumani. Yeye vile vile alisoma uhandisi.
Another hurdle is a political move that a section of Mount Kenya leaders are trying to push, that instead of Raila, the president should have considered nominating retired President Uhuru Kenyatta for the job.
Nimesikia kuna hii chairman wa AU. Na nasikia labda nchi sijui inapigia debe aliyekuwa anawania kiti cha urais Raila Odinga. Mimi nikafikiria maneno jana nikaona yani mnataka tupatie huyu na Uhuru wetu wako hapa.
But majority of the Kenya Kwanza leadership seems to have settled on Raila.
The former Prime Minister Raila Odinga in his rightful place as a Kenyan. If he has offered himself for an international job, the people of Kenya are obligated to support Raila Odinga as a Kenyan. He's not going to the AU as leader of ODM.
The Azimio leader, who is currently in Germany, is expected to tour various African countries to lobby for the lucrative position, whose budget is $600 million per annum, with the help of President William Ruto. Chris Dairu, KTN News, Nairobi.
All right, and that segues to our discussion here with the panelists. Hold on, guys. If that one just segues to our discussion here with our panelists, just to question that particular development that we have on the requirements, job requirements for the AU. Is it coming right now? If we hack back, was it the master's degree, the PhD was the requirement? And I can see all of you here are qualified, save for me. So I should not even tender. I should not even actually make the application. Professor Kagwanja, Dr. Yusuf Ali, and Dr. Hassan Kanenje, Professor Munene as well. Right, let's just discuss that. Dr. Hassan Kanenje.
I don't think they're going to be very strict on the so-called masters and PhD because Musa Faki neither has a master's nor a PhD. He has a law degree. Yeah. So I think this is a lot of hullabaloo about nothing. Otherwise, they would have enforced it with Musa Faki that he's been serving since 2017.
He did. But why was the requirement being put forward right now? Is it to raise this debate about the qualifications, or it has never been there before, or what is the ultimate qualification for that? Do you need a degree or not? I mean, that has been the biggest debate also here in the country, especially on the presidential bit, the governors as well. We've seen people making interventions in court that for a leader, you don't need to be having any degree, because that also is sort of violating the democratic rights of everyone who really wants to gag for that particular position. Dr. Mustafa?
Yeah, if they didn't put these qualifications, Dibal, I think all manner of jokers were going to apply for the job. and I agree with Dr. Kaneja, they don't necessarily follow what is contained in the requirements to apply for the job of the Africa Union Commission chairperson. I think what gives it a lot of weight is, and we've seen this being done in the past, is if one was a former president, a former prime minister, a former high-ranking government officials, especially in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, are likely to get that job. I think when you have a PhD and masters in international relations, international law, that's an added advantage. Much more important is the gravitas with which a candidate comes with. And so people like Lamini Zuma, Muhammad Faki, Jean Ping, and others, they actually held high-level government positions. They may not necessarily have been very educated or have high-ranking academic, scholarly qualifications in those positions.
All right, Peter Kagwanja.
Well, I think we need to emphasize here that it is important to stress academic credentials, but that in these diplomatic jobs, whether it's Secretary General of the United Nations or you're talking about the Secretary General of IGAD, ESE, and others, that's really not the primary criteria. If you navigate the politics, to head a political party, you don't have to have degrees and so on. You just have one core degree, which is loyalty. You have absolute loyalty to your boss. That's it. And that's how you go up the ranks of politics. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. That's the first one. Of course, academic degrees are an added advantage. If you have languages, for example, in Africa, you can speak Portuguese, French and English and a little bit Spanish, and more importantly, Arabic. You're good to go. But those are added advantage. The core criteria in these jobs is peerage. And if you remember the debate that was there, the problem with Africa and Kenya in particular is our historic. We have a phobia for history. We don't. Our memory is better off when it is not remembering anything. So the debate around Alpha Konare, the first chair of the reformed African Union, who was former president of Mali, was put there not because of his academic credentials, but because he was a president. And the presidents were tired of Ahmed, the Tanzanian, Salim Ahmed Salim, because he had not been the president, had never been anything in Tanzania in the gravitas that they wanted. So the argument at that time, in the founding of the African Union, was what kind of leadership do you need for the African Union Commission? In other words, the CEO of the African Union, what should be his gravitas? And top on the agenda was peerage. And the peerage is that when we go to caucus as heads of state, he should not be the odd one out. When we go to caucus, then of course after Alpha Konare, then the push was, for another criteria came up. You wanted to get out of your political space those people who are a threat to the sitting president. And that became a big criteria. So Jinping was the greatest threat to the president of Gabon, Ali Bongo, and therefore he was exiled to the African Union. Dlamini Zuma was the greatest threat to Ramaphosa, so he was exiled to the African Union. And finally, Musa Faki was actually the...
I can see where you're headed.
Yeah. No, it's true. No, it's not coming. It doesn't have to come. It's natural. If it swims like a duck and quacks like a duck, it is possible that's a duck. So Musa Faki was actually the greatest challenger to Idris Deby. Yes. And if an election was to come, Musa Faki would have won the election. And Idris Deby wanted his son to succeed, who is now the current president. So Musa was again exiled to this. And remember, it is done when Central Africa already had that seat and had not moved to any other part of the region. Remember, there is an agreement among the big five powers, Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, Algeria, and Ethiopia, that this seat will not be held by the big five, it will go to the small countries. Yet South Africa actually broke that protocol and put Dlamini Zuma, because at all costs he had to be exiled to Addis Ababa. So at all costs.
Was there any rhyme and reason for her being exiled as well?
Yeah,
her being also exiled. Was there any reason for that?
Yes, because she was a threat to Ramaphosa.
Yeah. She was a threat?
Yes, in ANC, the ANC politics.
Oh, okay.
She was a huge threat. And the husband was the sitting president, and she had huge gravitas in the ANC. So she had basically to be disconnected with local politics. And in that kind of flying from Addis Ababa to Europe, Addis Ababa to wherever you are cut from, Johannesburg and Pretoria. And that is what is raising the question as to whether this is the same thing in Kenya. So that's why I'm not going to apply, because nobody wants me to go into exile. But if nobody is interested in me going to exile, at least to the best of my knowledge. And therefore, I want to, I know I'm very, very qualified for this position, to be honest with you. On a very, very serious note, I'm very qualified. My brother Mustafa is very qualified. We are not just having masters and PhDs, we are supervising those PhDs and awarding them, you know. So we are really qualified. So you
have to flaunt it here.
We have political acumen, you know. You know, we have taken, you know, we have led policy processes. But we can't qualify because this is Kenya.
Political reasons.
This is Kenya. You can't qualify.
You can't qualify. This is Kenya.
No.
That statement is loaded with fraught with so much meaning.
That's why we are saying you don't look at what is advertised. You look at what is real.
Right.
You are not loyal enough.
But this particular position seems not just to be about your academic pedigree and what it is behind your name. It also means a lot in terms of the gravitas that you bring on the table, statesmanships, the political clout that comes with the day. Looking at some of the figures that actually have been there before, you can say that's maybe what they are looking for. Despite the fact that you have all these academic papers, there is a weight of statesmanships that it really carries. So you need to...
No, it is true. That's what we said, peerage. In Africa, it's, the big question here is peerage. By peerage, it means that you belong. If you are closer to that, and two, if you really is not a peer as such, because of your one notch or two below, then your head of state pushing you means that you're a peer to your head of state, and therefore you have the ear of your head of state, and you are more or less a proxy to your head of state. That's what Jinping was. That's what Dlamini Zuma was, because they were not heads of state like Alpha Konare, and currently, Musa Faki is also not in that peerage, but that's it. But this time round, I think because of the experience of the past and what we are now talking about, the much is going to be put into this than before.
Thank you.
But particularly within the region.
Yes. All right. But just looking at the African map as it is right now, because we've seen most of the heads have been picked from the Anglophone regions, the Francophone regions. Do you think this needle this time forth will really jot towards the East African, because everyone is saying, okay, this needle has been always ticking on this particular region. Now it is high time that now it points even a jot towards East Africa, the Anglophone nations as well. So could that also be a good contributing factor as a confluence of influence on the decision of who will be picked?
Dibal, it is a key.
It's a key one.
Factor because based on the rotational politics of the AU Commission's presidency, East Africa. I think the last time we were there was Salim Ahmed Salim. It's almost 3 decades ago. It's a long time ago, and so common sense dictates that if we have to maintain that rotational culture, then East Africa, is going to be the region that's going to produce that. Now, Tanzania has already produced someone, before. And so the question is, what will be happening with the rest of the East African community countries, for instance? And so Kenya, having been one of the first one to front a candidate, they seem to be united, around the candidate. Of course, it gives them certain advantages, but as Prof has mentioned, of course, there are also a few other challenges considering the new position that the president just assumed at the AU. However, I think if the country is determined, to do its politics right, both within the region as well as continentally, because ultimately this is also a political job.
It's a political job.
And so if we pretty much line all our ducks and we put all our hands on the deck with a clear strategy, there is a likelihood that we may succeed. Of course, it's going to be an uphill task, but nothing is impossible in politics. And so if we assume it as a mission that we have to commit ourselves and to get all the best minds, but also be able to deploy resources to execute a strategy regionally and continentally, we're going to increase our likelihood, because the position is going to come to East Africa. It is ours to lose.
All right, but looking at okay, let's hear from
Dibal, I just want to 2 points. One is a general observation that Kenya is doing very badly and poorly in pushing its nationals onto the international organizations, multilateral organizations, intergovernmental organizations. If you look at countries like South Africa, Nigeria, Senegal, in Africa, they have succeeded in pushing their nationals. If you go to the United Nations, to the Africa Union, you'll actually see that the West Africans, and in some cases the South Africans, have occupying very high positions and in numbers. Because their governments are pushing their nationals to those positions. Kenya is very always on time in paying its dues at the United Nations, Africa Union, IGAD, East African Community. Kenya pays on time, and these statistics are there publicly, in fact, on the portals. And yet Kenya seems to be getting a raw deal when it comes to actually getting its nationals in those positions. And it's very important. This is the work of the government to push its nationals onto those positions. Now, having a Kenyan at the Africa Union as AU chairman is very important, especially at this time. One is, and this is my personal opinion, I think right now the Africa Union is run down. Africa Union is not the Africa Union that we used to see, and I'm sure colleagues will agree with me, when like Lamini Zuma and others were actually there. In the last 4 years, we actually see the AU as a body being taken, like a dry leaf from wherever the powers that be globally wants it to go. And number two, at this time where the rules-based international order is under attack, we need a very strong candidate at the Africa Union as the AU chairperson. And I think the candidacy of Raila Amolo Odinga is very important. He's been a prime minister. Whatever people say about Raila Odinga is a peacemaker. A number of times Kenya teetered towards violence and anarchy, but he came as a statesman back and say Kenya is bigger than himself and all the politicians, and he agreed to a peace deal. The other reason is that right now at the Africa Union, you need a person who's not going to be bullied by the international community, by the United States of America, by Europe, by others. I think Raila Odinga is that kind of a person that will not be bullied. He is a very strong-headed person, and whatever his academic qualifications that we think, that's not very important. I think he might just be that person that restores Africa Union. I'm concerned about other factors around Raila Odinga, but I think the good and what he has done in the past and the gravitas that he might bring to that particular office is something that is of immense or rather considerable importance, and having him there as a Kenyan and Kenya pushing him to occupy that position, I think is going to be very good for Kenya.
It's interesting that also you mentioned how, aside from the bites we've seen from politicians, we are not as a country giving it the much import that we gave it when we, remember in 2020, we were gagging for the seat at the United Nations Security Council, you know, being led by Ambassador Monica Juma. And that import, the feistiness that she gave, the focus, the lesser focus, the rallying around that was there by then, it's not being seen or maybe not realized with this current sort of this position. So is it because this is African Union, that was the UN Security Council, as you say? So why aren't we really having that particular strategy of rallying and pushing the envelope like we could if we really want this particular position? And then again, another question will be, given also the way we are right now, looking at Uganda, if you just read some of the headlines like we have in the Daily Monitor now, or the Citizen, the Citizen of Tanzania, where we see the oil deal between Uganda and Tanzania has sailed through because of some of the frustrations that Uganda has been facing with Kenya regarding even some of these G2G government deals that they felt frustrated, they were not involved, they were not consulted, and now they're opting otherwise. We've ruffled their feathers and we've read these questions diplomatically. We're not faring well within the region as it is. So we are counting on these countries also to vote for Kenya. Do you think that will be our tripping wire if it comes to going down to the wire?
Now, let's first of all define the competition. And the competition is very narrow. It is between the 12 countries in the Eastern Africa region.
Could we list those 12 countries? Because I think
the 12 countries would start from the southmost, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Kenya itself is a member, Somalia, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Eritrea, Sudan, and we're done. Those are 12. Now, those 12 countries are defined as, and I don't know whether Congo would be included there because of the East African community. So there's a question hanging on that. Just like we have a question hanging on Tanzania because it's a member of SADC. And it's also a member of the East African community, overlap within the REX. Now, what that means is that Kenya is going to face its competition, or if you wish, people like this phrase, it's going to face its demons in the East African region. And I think that's cut and dry. It's not going to change. Why? Because it was agreed within the African Union that it has to rotate and alphabetically. So we have now East Africa. We start with Central Africa, and then you go that way, heading with West Africa. That said, then the big question is what you've raised about Kenya's capacity to push for its citizens. These seats are very competitive, as it were. If you look at the United Nations, you are either largely a former head of state or a very distinguished bureaucrat within the United Nations. That's how Kofi Annan made it. It is not Ghana that made Kofi Annan. He had never been a head of state of anywhere, but he was the best-known bureaucrat within the United Nations. Boutros Ghali was pushed by Egypt, but he also had a very high status globally at that level. Now, but after that, we need a person. Guterres was a former prime minister of Portugal, and therefore that's what he brings into the space. And you're going to see increasingly, with the increasing numbers of ex-presidents and ex-prime ministers, or simply former heads of states, who have also huge academic qualifications. These are the ones that are going to go because there's a huge pool of this capacity. Kenya has two problems to itself. One, our elite is fragmented. Correct. It is, it's like wild cats fighting against each other. So if they cannot put their best forward because of their internal rivalries and animosity among themselves, because our elections always produce acrimony that creates an elite that is very unforgiving, very vengeful, and very tribal. I don't think at this level it's even tribal. It is basically that antagonism that emerges from elections is what really holds Kenya back. Now, and two, institutionally, we are also fragmented. So whether it's the Minister of Foreign Affairs that is supposed to lead this crusade, or the Office of the President, or it is another a unique ministry that is going to do, or office that's going to do that. We have never decided, because even in our own international engagement, we have not defined ourselves. Yes, constitutionally, it's the Minister for Foreign Affairs who is supposed to push for all these things. But all of a sudden, you find that other offices are, coalescing within the larger security triad, whether it is defense or the Office of the President or the Minister for Foreign Affairs, or favored people outside this triad end up dominating. The time of President Kenyatta was a little bit exceptional. We had hits and misses at the same time. We went for 4 major positions that we fought for. One was the African Union Commission. Whether Amina won or did not win, Kenya showed the gravitas that we can rally behind somebody. And I think Amina did not win because she could not win, or she did not have what it took to be the AU chairperson of the AU Commission. She lost because of our own politics. We had stepped on too many sensitive toes across Africa. Second, we went to the WTO. Again, Amina was a candidate. This time we won. We didn't win because the lady who was there had more experience, the one who is there now. And that's what you can tell. You don't need competition. I think we put a bid on the Commonwealth. But the Caribbeans did a wonderful job. They said, we've been now being discriminated, blah, blah, blah. And therefore, the one who was there, Baroness, stayed on. And therefore, we didn't go far. The United Nations Security Council, we fought and won. Why? Because we put every of our machinery to that purpose. Right. And it is for the first time when even colleagues seated here were a member of that war. We put together our think tanks, we put together our diplomats, we put together our embassies, and we put together our marketing skills as a country. We took all those members for a tour in Mombasa and our tourist resorts, and they were all happy. And so we put everything that we have, that God has given us to fight for this, and that's how we won the seat. This time round, we are going to this issue divided. I'm sure more information is going to come out of this debate. But essentially, if Kenya puts its act together, this seat is ours to lose.
Right. It just needs a strategy.
A strategy.
Without that, we are not going to get it.
We can't.
Right, thank you. We have our music app right now. We want to take a short break. When we circle back, we shall look also at the previous leadership within the AU Commission. How has it been with the exit also of Musa Faki, and the previous also leadership, and the gravitas of AU itself, as it's been losing its sheen over the years right now. Does the voice of AU have so much gravitas and input on the tables of issues around the world that we can actually rely on it when it comes to its own obligation, right, from the member